Hi guys! In this video I'm going to show you 3 ways to add some flowers to your wardrobe. So this first shirt is a shirt where I actually took a blue shirt and I added a ruffle on top, and I also added a little bit on the side, and I also added in some blue flowers. And the second one is where I've added some flowers onto a dress. So these first 2 projects are where I've actually created the flowers from some fabric and just hand sewn them into the garment, either the shirt or the dress. And the third one I'm going to show you is when I purchased some flower patches and sew them into a coat. So the third one is going to be good if you're maybe new to sewing and not really comfortable creating your own flowers, but you just want to add a little bit of flower power to your wardrobe. So purchasing the tiny little flower patches is a really good way to go. If you're just maybe starting out, or maybe don't have that much time on your hands but want to add a little bit of decoration to your coat. So let's get started. For this sewing project, I purchased this top off of eBay, and I really like the overall style of it. It had some really beautiful flowing sleeves that I really loved. There was only a couple of issues. I thought the neckline was a bit too low for me, and I thought the hips needed to be a little bit wider. So I definitely needed to make the bottom a little bit wider there for my taste. So this is the final project that I'm going to be taking you guys through. So to deal with the neckline, which wasn't quite right for me, I've added this floral ruffle just to bring the neckline up a couple of inches. And I'm adding some fun flowers. And on the sides, I've just added a little bit of fabric just to make it a little more flowy, just to make it closer to the kind of style that I'm used to wearing. So let's get started. So my first step is to deal with the neckline. So I found this really delicate, beautiful floral print. The width is about 5 inches. And I used 5 inches just so I could fold it onto itself, which will give me about 2.5 inches less exposed neckline, just to bring it up about 2.5 inches, just so I don't feel so exposed. And I'm using these colorful clips just to keep it in place before I do the sewing. So just to keep this stitch in place while I'm working with it, what I'm doing is just kind of a loop kind of stitch. Just a very quick and easy kind of stitch just to keep it in place while I'm working with it. So to start off the ruffle, what I'm doing is just a straight stitch, and I'm just keeping my stitches just as long as possible. And after I finish gathering up the material, I'm using these bright and colorful clips just to keep them in place. Just long enough so I can actually pin the material to the shirt. After you do these ruffles, the ruffles will just move around on you like crazy. So I definitely recommend using some clips or pins just to make it so you don't have to readjust your ruffles as you're sewing. And here's the ruffle all pinned up. Just doing one final check to make sure everything looks good. So this is the initial sewing of the ruffle to the shirt. And I'm just being really cautious, trying to only grab one layer of fabric just so the stitching doesn't show through to the outside. And I usually have to adjust my pins as I go because the thread will get caught on the pins. It's a little bit tedious, but just keep going. And after I sewed the ruffle to the shirt, I realized it was very loose. It didn't feel really secure. So I'm actually doing another stitch on the other side of the ruffle just to keep it in place. And again, the stitching that I'm doing, I'm trying just to make sure, you know, the stitching isn't too visible. So I'm trying to snag the material at the very top of the original neckline. So this is the material that I'm going to be using on the side of the shirt. I thought it would be fun to use a slightly different material. So I thought yellow and blue really go well together. So the first step is to get out my seam ripper and actually take out the existing seam. And after you rip apart the seams, then you need to kind of clean it up a bit. So this is the cutout piece. And I've pinned the new fabric to the existing shirt. And I'm using an overlock stitch just to sew the new material to the existing shirt. And an overlock stitch is a pretty secure stitch, so I want to make sure that this new piece of fabric isn't going to come loose. It is going to get a lot of wear and tear, as you're taking it off and putting it on. So I want to make sure it's really going to be a good stitch. So this is the material all sewn in. So actually, after I did the sewing, I realized the original stitching left these little tiny holes. So I want to deal with these little holes just by doing a new straight stitch right over them, just so these tiny little holes are not visible to the outside. Now it's time to do the flowers. So these are the two pieces of materials that I will be working with for the flowers. So I cut out these flowers from a pattern, and I've added a layer of jersey material in the middle. So there's a a fabric of blue, there's a jersey material, and then on the other side there's the blue pattern again. So it's actually got 3 layers. I think the jersey material really helps just to give it a little more structure, just to make it easier to sew on. Because I'm actually going to be sewing these layers together and then sewing it to the shirt. So I wanted to make sure that the materials could actually take all of this sewing that I'm going to be doing to it. And I'm doing this overlock stitch to sew all the materials together. So I initially thought I would just do a few stitches, and then I realized that it really wasn't enough. So I'm going over all of the stitches one more time. And this is the middle of the flower. And I've actually got 3 layers of the jersey material on this. I wanted to raise it up just a little bit, just to make it a little more of a different dimension than the blue petals. And I'm using the same stitch as I used with the petals, so an overlock stitch. And the size of the material is just really small. really kind of tedious, and just a much smaller area to work in for the stitching. So now what I'm doing is sewing the yellow material to the blue material. And I'm using these clips just to keep them in place, just so it doesn't move around on me too much. And I put the shirt back on the mannequin just so I could place the flowers, just to make sure the flowers are in a place that I want them to be in. And once I was satisfied with that, I took it off the mannequin and put a few more pins in it just to make sure that it stays in place. And I'm just doing a straight stitch all around, just to adhere all of the petals to the shirt. And here is the ruffle. And I really love how that turned out. It just looks really nice. And the flowers, I like my color choices. The fabrics are just slightly similar, but just a little bit different. Kind of makes it an interesting combination of colors. And then I've got my swatch of fabric on the side. I think all these different colors just make it kind of quilty and, you know, kind of cottagecore and really. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how I cottagecoreify a dress. So I purchased this green sundress off of eBay. I really love the colors, but not quite my style. So I've added a dark green shirt and also some flowers. So let's get into this. So this is the dress that the sundress that I purchased off of eBay. It's a very lightweight dress. And to show you guys the back side of things, it's got a really beautiful ties where you can create a bow. And it's also got some elastic on the back. I think just to cinch the waist a little bit. And this is a very lovely dark green shirt. This is an Old Navy shirt, and I really I really loved how lightweight it is. I thought it would just be the perfect way to accompany a lightweight sundress. And it's got these really fun sleeves on it. And just really simple on the back. So my first step here is to remove the elastic. For my style of clothing, I like clothes just to be a little more loose. I prefer not to have things that are cinched at the waist. So I didn't think that this elastic was really doing anything for the dress at all. So I'm just removing the elastic. So the hard part is always to get out your seam rippers and actually remove all of the stitching, because you want to be really delicate about it. You don't want to pierce the fabric. And you can do this with seam rippers or even tiny little scissors, but it's usually a bit of a process here. And after that's all done, you've got a mess on your hands. So the next step is just to cut out the elastic. And just remove any of the loose threads that you can. And after you remove the threads, it starts looking a little more pretty. And I'm using these little clips that I got off of Amazon. I'm a big fan of the clips. If I can avoid piercing the fabric with pins, I will. So clips are a really good option. Plus, they're so easy to move around while you're sewing. You know, while you're sewing, if a clip is in the way, you just move it down a couple of inches, and you know you're back to sewing. It's a lot easier than dealing with the pins, I think. So the stitch that I'm doing here is I'm just snagging a thread or two on one side of the fabric, and then piercing the area that used to have the elastic in it. All right, so I have re-added the sundress to the shirt, and we're gonna just sew on the two items together here. And I did actually end up using some of my pins to to position the two articles together. There are some places in sewing where the clips just do not work, where you just have to get out your pins. All right, so for the back, I decided to do some stitching here as well. I realized that after I loosened up the elastic, it was a little bulgy back there. So definitely need to sew the two pieces together back there as well, just for modesty's sake. So I'm using the same stitch that I'm using before here. So now that we've sewn together the shirt and the dress, now it's time to make some flowers. So I'm using a green material and also a yellow material. I thought both of these would look really fun with the two colors that we've got going on for the sundress and the shirt. So I've got 2 layers of the flower, and I'm also going to be adding in a layer of jersey knit. And I've pinned these 3 layers together. I think just to keep them in place while I do some sewing here. So the stitch that I'm doing is an overlock stitch. And I'm just going to be using the same stitch all around these flowers. And doing these stitches took actually a few hours. This is a time intensive kind of step. So put on your favorite movie and kick back, and you don't need a lot of attention for these steps. It's just a lot of tiny little stitches. So for the yellow circle, I'm actually using 3 layers of the jersey knit between them. I wanted this section to stand out a little bit more than the other, than the petals, just to give it a little bit of a different dimension. And I'm using the same stitch that I'm using on the petals, so just an overlock stitch. So to sew the yellow portion to the petals, I'm using my clips just to keep it in place so it doesn't start moving around on me. So I put the dress back on the mannequin, just so I could place the flowers. I decided it would be better to place the flowers when I could see everything all at once. So that's what I'm doing here, is just doing just one pin just to get them in place, just so I can see what the overall thing is gonna look like after I get everything sewn on. So to sew on these flowers to the dress, I'm just using a really simple kind of straight stitch along the edges. I'm using an off-white kind of thread, which I think makes it a little more invisible, not so noticeable. And here is the finished dress. I really love the two shades of green. I think the two shades of green work really well together. And I've got all of my stitching, and the strap I've just left loose. And I've got my very lovely flowers. I really like how those flowers turned out. I think they turned out really well. I think they're kind of fun and kind of cottagecore and just something fun and unique on the dress. And then here is the back. So I've got the back all sewn up, and I've left the bow kind of loose so the wearer can decide what kind of bow they want to use. Hi guys, this is a sewing tutorial slash upcycling demonstration. So recently I found this lovely wool coat on eBay. It's not perfect, but it's got plenty of wear left. It is 100% wool. It is from Talbot's. Got some very lovely buttons in it, and I think I got a pretty good deal on it. It was only 99 cents, so basically I paid almost nothing for it and just had to pay for shipping. And for the flowers, what I'm using is just some flowers that I also found on eBay. I only ended up using less than half, so just for a few dollars plus shipping, you get these very lovely little flowers. So I would say more than anything, this project is about patience. Sewing on flowers is not very difficult at all. Very easy, very beginner level kind of stuff. What it mostly is a lot of patience. So the package of flowers that I got had 50 in it. I used less than half of them, so I would say, not counting them up, I probably used about 20 or so of these tiny little flowers. So what this project is mostly is just you putting in some very simple stitches into the coat and also into the flower. So my thought is I'm just putting a few stitches into the coat and the flower, just making sure the flower is going to be snug. It is a winter coat, and you're going to be giving it a lot of wear and tear. You're going to be taking it off and putting it on, and stuffing it into your closet. So you want to make sure you've got some pretty secure stitches on each of these flowers. And I want to make sure that the flowers are going to be situated in a somewhat even kind of way. So I'll start on one side of the flower, and then I'll do some stitching on the other side, just so the flower isn't trying to do all the work on one side of things. It might end up appearing slanted or something. So I want to make sure I do some stitching on at least two sides of the flower, just to make sure it's really going to be situated well, and it's going to look flat. So that's what I'm looking for as I'm doing each of these flowers. And I would say the biggest struggle, if you've never sewn on patches before, which is basically what these are. Patches are basically thread and glue. So you might end up, struggling trying to pierce through the thread of the patch if you're hitting glue. So it's just finding the right area really to pierce the flower to get it sewn on. So it just takes a little bit of experience and patience, a lot of patience with this particular project. I'd say the first 2 or 3 is probably going to be the most of the struggle for you if you're brand new to sewing on patches. But after you've done a couple and you've been sewing into your jacket and also into the patch, you kind of get a feel for where you need to stick your needle into the patch. You can visually see which is the area that's going to have some glue, that's going to be hard to sew into. But after the first 2 or 3, you get kind of in a rhythm, and it's not too difficult. And the other part of the patience of this project is it's about 20 little flowers, so it's just a lot of you're sewing on one, and then you're sewing on another, and you're just making sure you're spacing it out in a way that looks good. So you're just kind of taking each of these flowers kind of step by step as you're sewing them on. But I think this is a really good beginner kind of project, because you're learning how to make a few simple stitches. You're learning how to space out your flowers. You're learning how to take each of these things step by step and complete them. It's a multi-step kind of project, which I think is really good for a beginner. And for very little money and a little bit of patience, you get to have a satisfaction that you actually did a sewing project. All right, and this is just the first few that I've done, just trying to space them out. And I didn't do any kind of measuring at all. I just kind of eyeballed them as to what I thought would look good. And what I really enjoy on a project like this is completely up to you how many you want to do. You know, you could space them out really wide, and maybe you only want to sew on like 10 little flowers, you know, or you could just be super crazy and, you know, purchase a whole bag full of 50 of them and just place them all over your collar. Completely up to you, and it's a very individual kind of project. All right, and here is the finished project. So it has about 20 or so flowers is my guess. Again, I haven't counted them out, but that's what they kind of look like to me. And I just kind of alternated all of the colors, and I even put them on the back side of the collar, and I just think they just look pretty and bright and very much a cottagecore kind of aesthetic, and hopefully other people will just see it and go, wow, or where did you get that? And you can just tell them that you did this all of yourself. And so that's really kind of fun. All right, thank you everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.